space and Ben's space, but we have a new person with us today, Casey. So, well, first of all, if you weren't here, I'm Ella. I am one of the Secretary Generals for this year, which means I am in charge of the whole thing. I'm not the only person, though. I have a co-SG. She does a lot of work. She's not able to be here today, though. And then we have 3 ASGs. One of our ASGs, Aaliyah, will be joining us later. And then one of our ASGs, Caroline, who is actually in charge of all the crisis stuff on the upper secretariat side, is here today. So yeah, just the things about me. I'm a senior at Patrick Henry High School. I've been doing JMUN since, 7th grade, which is crazy to think about. Yeah, and then Caroline, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi guys, my name is Caroline. I am one of the ASGs this year. I'm also in charge of, like Ella said, all of crisis, so I kind of oversee everything that's going on. I'm a junior at Point Loma. My pronouns are she, they, and yeah, I'm really excited to do this, and I'm a huge fan of, I've always really had a special spot in my heart for doing crisis committees, so I'm so glad you guys are all doing this. So, yeah.
And then, so Ben was here at our last meeting. Ben, if you want to introduce yourself for new people.
All right, hi. Again, if you were here at the last meeting, you'll recognize me, but otherwise, so I'm Ben Gonzalez. I'm a senior at Patrick Henry, and I'm serving as one of your 2 co-crisis directors this year. I have been doing JMUN since 6th grade, and like Caroline, crisis is like where I really found my passion and my spot in the JMUN dynamic, so I love doing it, and I can't wait to see how all you guys do. And then my co-crisis director, Casey, is also here.
Hi, I'm Casey Bitter. I go by he, him, and I've been doing crisis since 8th grade, and I've done a crisis almost every single year, and I've done a little bit over 6 crisis committees. And I'm Ben's other half of this committee.
Awesome. So I'm really glad y'all could make it today. I know that we are a smaller, we're a smaller committee. Well, not we, I'm not in it, but you guys are a smaller committee, so every person counts. Yeah, so hopefully this will give you a little window into position papers or a refresher. A few things, just if you have any questions, it's best to type them in the chat, and make sure you are not messaging me or Caroline. It's okay if you are, but it'll be better to just message the general chat or Ben or Casey directly, because then they can address your questions faster. Yeah, so any questions throughout the entire thing, message them, and they can take a break and answer them really quickly or get to them later. Remember, keep your cameras off and hopefully mute yourself. Worst comes to worst, so just mute everybody. And yeah, the presentation for today will be available later for everybody, as well as a lot of the resources you guys will see throughout. And we'll address more questions at the end. Okay, thank you guys. Get ready, I guess. Okay, so Ben, do you want a screen share? Yeah, okay, awesome.
You guys can see it, right?
Yeah.
All right, sweet. All right, so this topic for today's webinar is crisis position papers, because you guys should be starting them pretty soon, and they aren't like your traditional GA position paper that you might be used to. So for today, we will have 3 sections. So first, it's going to go over what is a crisis position paper, kind of how does it differ from your typical GA position paper, and then more specifically, like section 2 will like break it down into all of its various sections and go, what are the parts, because there's like a paragraph or 2 that responds to each part. And then for 3, we have some examples of a good position paper and a not so good position paper that we'll go over, and they'll be made available for you later so that you can kind of base your format and style after those. So yeah.
Oh, and then at the end, we'll also be taking questions.
Oh yeah, throughout the
stream through us. So for the first part, I'm going to do a little recap of crisis. So the crisis is an event in history. In this specific committee, it will be the American Revolution, portraying both the American and the British sides. And you'll be randomly assigned a character instead of the normal MUN format where you would be instead receiving a country, instead you will be a character trying to defend your side, whether it be American or British, trying to pursue your own interests in this. Not there, you could also betray your country and many other types of shenanigans. And there's going to be a different flow of debate, a little bit more informal than the typical MUN conference, and it will be through your perspective of your character, not through your country, although it's typically aligning. And I think that covers it for the crisis recap. Unless you have anything to add.
All right, so what is a crisis position paper? So while crisis and other committees, again, have similarities from position papers, there are still differences. You still have like the background information part, but you'll see that basically anything after that sort of differs traditionally. So what is a position paper in general? So a position paper is obviously a written document that should serve to kind of contextualize your research for the conference. So that's really where you start doing a lot of like looking into like your topics or the historical context behind the topics, and what your typically country, but in this case character, has to do with the topic. It'll address the issue, and it's sort of where you learn and research your policy and like what side you take on the issue. Again, gives background and context. So in this case, for the American Revolution, it'll contextualize the war, the revolution, and what led up to it, and what precipitated it. And in this case, crisis, it'll address your character's policy as an individual, and not so much as a country, which is where it really differs from your typical GA position paper. Again, so like what makes it unique? You're speaking from the perspective of a character, not a country, since you're all assigned characters. Some of you will have a really obvious perspective, given that you're an admiral for the British. It's pretty easy to imagine which side you support. But others of you are more sort of ambiguously aligned. You definitely lean towards one side, given that you're placed in one of the two committees and you're competing committees. But you might not necessarily support all of the actions of the committee. So this will definitely be a good opportunity for you to, go over the crisis, the historical context, and go, but I believe this, and this. I believe this is wrong. I believe this is right. And then unlike a GA position paper, which typically has, sort of three breakdowns where it's like background information, past international involvement, and then your country's involvement, this has 4 sections to address. So in my experience, crisis position papers tend to be a tiny bit longer. But what we'll see is that while length might imply that you've written a good paper, it doesn't always imply. And then also the position papers are meant to address the historical situation. So while GA papers don't usually go so far into depth to the history, they more focus on like the contemporary effects. Since this is a historical crisis committee, we are focusing more on the past, and more specifically, since you have a starting timeline in crisis that is in the present day, you have to be very careful and meticulous in that you don't address anything beyond that date, because it won't have happened, and therefore if you address it, it'd be like you're writing on like the future. And so you have to be very careful with your research to always make sure, okay, I'm about to talk about this part, has it even happened yet? So, and it's also like, even though all of us know how it ends, you kind of have to pretend that you don't, and you have to be like, from this point on, this is how it looks. Again, very similar, like very nitty-picky like format guidelines, very similar to a typical GA position paper. Times New Roman, 12-point font, spacing, margins, you get it. But again, they tend to be a tiny bit longer in my experience than a GA paper, so anywhere from 1 to 3 pages. 3 is recommended. If you do 4, that's kind of mean to the graders, because no one wants to read through a bunch of 4-page position papers, and you tend to get repetitive after 3. And then if you do 1, it's like you're not really in depth. So 3 pages is usually like your nice spot. Your header, unlike a GA paper, which will typically have your country, you will have your character official name. So again, John Adams is the example here, Patrick Henry, George Washington, anything like that. And the committee topic, which is obviously the American Revolution, but then you also specify American side or British side. Even if you have some sort of plan to maybe switch, but for now just put your designated side. And they are written in the third person, even though you are still writing as a character, you're still not using like I, me, we. You're still writing like John Adams. Is there a question? Let me see. Do they write American side specifically, or is there a certain way they should write it? I believe that it's fine if you write American side. I think in the example position papers that we have, with like the joke topic of Captain America Civil War, it says like Captain America side, Iron Man side. So yeah, just write American side, British side. All right.
All right. So now I'll be covering the different parts of the position paper for Crisis at least. So as the caption says, we know that it's a position paper, but it would make a little bit more sense if we broke it down into small pieces, as almost everything aligns with a normal position paper except for one special segment, which I'll get to later. Then if you don't mind. All right. So the first part of the background is, or position paper, sorry, is the background information. So it needs to cover the primary issues of what are the causes of this issue, what influenced it, what are some expected outcomes, like for this specific topic, is the expected outcome that America frees itself, or is it that it stays under British reign? So how has it progressed recently? Like as in at this current moment in the war, and the predicted starting date is the Battle of Saratoga. So it would be what happened recently to, influence this war. So Battle of Saratoga would be recently the turning point in the war, theoretically. So then paragraph 2 would cover international involvement. What is this issue's local and international impact? Say in Captain America's Civil War, it's a worldly issue. They involved, there's the transgressed against many borders, and it's caused a local conflict or a worldwide conflict, and it's kind of gotten out of control. So what are international alliances or enemies in this dispute, and what world powers have a role in this? So for the Civil War, in this case, it would be the United States government as well as the United Nations have a role in this. And then on to the next part. So number 3 for the paragraphs is your policy, or your side's policy. So you have to cover the issues of why is this relevant? So for if you're American, it would be why does your character specifically care whether or not they're freed from Britain? If you were a Tory or a Patriot, your sides would drastically change, or your view would drastically change, and that would influence your third paragraph. What is your side's goal? What has your side done to take action on this issue? Say for the Tories, it would be tar and feathering, or sorry, not the Tories, the Patriots. It would be tarring and feathering, or many other issues that haven't been discussed. And then for number 4, this is the unique paragraph for Crisis, where instead of talking about your country's policy, it's actually your person's policy. What does your character specifically want to do? Say you're an admiral, you want to take supreme control over the Navy. If you are a soldier, say you want to become the next George Washington, or in this case, you want to be the George Washington of the United States. What is your title? What is your involvement? And then what does your person want to accomplish? It needs to be clearly outlined, and it needs to give a little plan that would serve to help you out, that you should follow as a guide throughout this conference. And I believe that covers it.
Just kind of adding in the little like footnote there at the end. So I don't think any of you have taken AP classes. So in AP classes, like there's like a rubric that you follow, and although you don't it's recommended that like you follow like the formatting that they give you exactly, it's not required. So in this case, like, it's a very similar situation. So even though this is very much laid out so that 4 paragraphs can effectively address the 4 different aspects, and it makes like a very clear distinction between your different sections. It's not entirely required. So perhaps you may find that you can blend paragraph 3 and paragraph 4 into one cohesive paragraph that addresses both your side's policy and your own personal policy, and that's fine. It's just that, I don't know, it's recommended that you do 4 paragraphs since it's more distinct, but if you choose to stylistically do 3 or 2, that's fine as long as the content meets like the 4 different sections. We will be looking at examples of crisis position papers now, again on the topic of Captain America Civil War, and we'll be beginning with Captain America Civil War, a poorly written paper. So let me.
So I'll be briefly reading.
Oh, sorry, Ben, really quickly. Do you want to zoom in a little bit? It's kind of hard to see. Maybe like 175 or something. Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
All right, and then just scroll down as I start reading it. So I'll be reading it and then giving it a little bit of judgment as I go through it, seeing what's going through our heads as the crisis directors. So first off, it starts with this is being Captain America's perspective in the Captain America Civil War. And it starts off by saying, the rift between the totality backwards side, led by Tony Stark, and the justice bound side, led by myself, already showing clear bias, first arose in conjunction with the Hero Registration Act, a political mandate with aims to limit our rights as superheroes. Iron Man began acting completely insane by supporting this act and principles that it promotes. Here, they use the word insane, which shows clear bias, and also it kind of walks off from the path of Captain America being this stoic figure, so I would already criticize this part. And then it goes on by saying, by supporting this act and the principles that it promotes, the unwarranted meddling of the government in the lives of the protectors of the world. And without warning, the government is now doubling up their anger against us because of the bombing of the fateful United Nations conference in Vienna. Now, King T'Chaka of Wakanda has been killed and everyone's pointing fingers at Bucky Barnes, my BFF. And here, you would have to be an absolute idiot to write something such as my BFF, because it's absolutely informal and it shows very little understanding of what your character is, as this is supposed to be a formal event itself and a formal speech. These accusatory fingers are unwarranted, utterly unwelcome. So then it goes on in the next paragraph to say, I don't have any idea why someone would support the United Nations in this international effort to essentially put an end to free superhero reign as we know it. Well, in this part, I think that this is poor to put in your own position paper, as it shows that you have clearly stated that you have no idea why anybody would support this. However, something alternative that should be done and is better to do altogether is state maybe a reason or two why somebody would support this and then refute that directly after it. Here, it's totally disregards that. And it goes on saying, disgraceful. These politicians are slandering the history. The royal past of heroes who simply do their job and actually protect people around the world. Now it seems as if everybody in the whole world has turned against me and my beliefs. All of the government that had previously relied on us for safeguarding their people are now joining hands in this cult of hatred. I think that this part itself maybe find a state, however, it still leads to a large bias, and it might get you called out in the conference itself if you stated something like this. So then it goes on stating they are now forming an alliance with Stark's team, whose members Black Panther, Vision, Black Widow, War Machine, and Spider-Man, who have obviously chosen the wrong path. My team, Bucky Barnes, Falcon, Scarlet, Witch, Hawkeye, and Ant-Man, who are 100 times more superior and well equipped to handle the mental strain that accompanies accidentally destroying cities in the process of saving the world. So here, I would also once again say, maybe refrain from stating something like destroying cities accidentally in the process of saving the world, as that clearly states that you may very well do so. As well, that it doesn't give any direct evidence to support the fact that their team is more superior in handling this kind of event. As well, it states that the other side has chosen the wrong path without giving any direct reason as to why, other than the fact that it's just not their side. So I am now against the new act, the Sokovia Accords, that are dangerously sly in their manner of chaining down our powers and our right to autonomy. I can trust my own judgment, but not that of politicians. the unbelievably horrid corruption and incompetence often seen in large governing bodies will inevitably arise and strike corruption and incompetence often seen in large governing bodies. Oh, sorry, I double reading that. Down and good, positively good effort we ever poured into the cases or causes that us superheroes dedicate our lives to. As the captain of Team Captain America, I support absolutely no government involvement whatsoever in the affairs of all powerful superheroes. I plan to seek out as many other compliant, reasonable superheroes as I possibly am able to. All for the great nation of freedom that I will create. Superheroes like myself will call it a home and a sanctuary, called paradise, because it will be paradise at its finest. Now here it's actually kind of ironic, as this now sounds like a cult, although that's what they call the other side of this. So you're kind of playing into your own joke here. And then it goes on to state that this plan will succeed only after Dominion is secured from war. That's kind of happy to throw out. That implied, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I'm struggling. That implies that there's going to be war here and that you plan to destroy the other side entirely, instead of compromising. Total war and total destruction of the evil side. There we go. Total war and total destruction. That is not a great compromise. That is just one-sided victory. That's not what anybody would agree to, and that doesn't lead many to want to join you. So we will use every tool and every resource that we can to get our hands on. I will need to, and without fail, clear the name of Bucky, the innocent, pure guy that will be my partner in the upcoming war that will initiate the era of superhero-dom. And here he goes on to state, the innocent, pure guy that will be my partner. Here, if it's stated that Bucky is an innocent, pure guy, although he's done countless murders with no justification other than the fact that he was brainwashed, then it shows that you align yourself with his morals as you view him as innocent. Therefore, you may start doing the actions that Bucky does in the name of justice. So I think for all of these reasons, that this is a poor position paper. It doesn't give very clear justification as to why they're the good side. It doesn't give justification as to why they should utterly destroy them, other than that they view them as the evil side. Once again, not giving any reason as to why they are the evil side, calling the other a cult while also seeming like a cult themselves, and just very many informalities. And I believe that concludes it, unless if you have anything else to add to this.
I'm gonna kind of like touch on what this did wrong by showing what the other does right. So for now, I think we're good. I think there's like a typo in here somewhere that I noticed, and like that's kind of like another thing about like bad position papers. Like even though typos, like we're all human, we make typos. Like I've submitted typos to my college apps. If you have a lot of typos, it's kind of evident and it implies that you didn't really proofread it, which just kind of like puts your reader in like a mentality where like you don't really care. So proofread it, go through your typos. If you have like one or two, like it's fine, but if you have like a lot, if it's excessive, then it kind of starts having a negative impact. Alright, so moving on to I'll zoom in on this one too. Moving on to the good position paper example, or better. Just right off the bat, you will notice that this one is 3 pages, whereas the other one was only 1 page, not even. So right off the bat, you know, it's looking better. And then if we read through it or skim through it, because this is certainly long. So Tony Stark, Civil War, Iron Man side, good heading. The Avengers Initiative started in 1995, was nominated to protect humanity by fighting battles that humanity never could. So already, like, it gives you like a timeline of like when they're starting, so 1995. It's objective, and I think that while everyone very obviously like has their own like bias and like what their side believes, your first paragraph of like background information should not necessarily be entirely objective, but it shouldn't be where you start bringing in most of like your own beliefs. So like what you'll notice in like the bad example is that it was very biased. The diction definitely was pretty intense, and that's not something that I would entirely recommend. I'd keep it more formal, and again, not entirely objective, but not entirely subjective. That goes like later on. And then it goes, since then, the program has been run inefficiently, ineffectively, and unacceptably errantly. Having been first called into action to combat the 2012 alien invasion of New York, the Avengers, while ultimately successful in their battle, allowed and even in some cases caused unnecessary damage to human property, life, and way of life in the city. So here it's criticizing, but it's doing so in a manner that's like very academic, it's very formal, and it's effective because it doesn't like use informal diction like the other one did. Like the other one said like totally. There's like one really bad example. Completely insane. Like that's not formal at all. It's not academic. So this one already off the bat is a lot better. It continues. Further, they acted without the authorization of the World Security Council, WSC, that was meant to oversee them. They also effectively disappeared and refused to allow government agencies to use the Tesseract, which was property of the U.S. government prior to the actions of Loki. It goes on and says, after the battle, the majority of the Avengers left with minimal ways to contact them and accepted no responsibility for parts of the damage that they caused. So even though it's not using any commentary to criticize them, like it doesn't, nowhere there does it say that's bad. It just presents the facts in a manner that implies like that's bad. Like after the battle, the majority of the Avengers left with minimal ways to contact them and accepted no responsibility. That is very much implied like they are at fault. And so I think that's something that good position papers do well, is sort of like say without saying. And again, like first paragraph is like objective and it's still doing a really good job of like setting the scene for like their own side. It kind of goes on with this type of thing for the rest of the first paragraph, which goes for almost a whole page. So a few good lines. It acknowledges counter arguments, so it goes, another thing that bears mentioning is that the Battle of New York was not as random a threat as many believe. It was actually the result of the brother of one of the Avengers himself, Thor. And then here it says, while Thor can hardly be blamed for his brother's actions, the threat was not as random as might have seemed, and Loki was able to start the battle due in large part due to mistakes made by Thor and other Avengers due to their personal connection to Loki. So there it kind of acknowledges like you can't blame Thor entirely, but like this could have been foreseen. And so, you know, acknowledging a counter argument or acknowledging a counter argument and then countering it is like another thing that good position papers do well, instead of entirely neglecting the other view, which is what the bad position paper did, where it said, I don't have any idea why anyone would support the United Nations. So you don't want to entirely like debunk, like neglect the other argument, because that makes it seem as if like you're not well versed enough in the topic to actually like intelligently debate it. Another few good parts of the first paragraph of this one, we're gonna skip a ton. It starts bringing in like statistics into play. The mistake of two men in a non-emergency situation should not cost $474 billion, or more importantly, cause 177 civilian deaths. So there, the usage of quantitative data adds a lot of like ethos, credibility. And so again, like another thing good position papers do well. If you can find statistics on the revolution, that's sweet. I don't know how many you will, because it's like 1700s and stats wasn't really like a hot science at the time. But if you can and they're like legit, then you definitely build a lot of credibility. And it's hard to fight the numbers. All this time, SHIELD, a US-based government security organization, which itself has minimal accountability, has been nominally overseeing the actions of the Avengers. So again, it doesn't say that's bad, but it implies it because it goes, the only people in charge of them themselves have like no accountability. And I'm not going to say that's bad, but like you do with that what you will. So again, first paragraph really solid. It's objective, but it still contextualizes and frames the narrative in a way that supports their side. Quantitative data mixed with qualitative data, and it acknowledges counter arguments. So moving on to the second paragraph, which is shorter. Past international involvement. It says, the WSC is the main body meant to oversee the Avengers, but the Avengers don't actually listen to them. disobeying direct orders and flaunting any other direction. The Avengers do not follow any chain of command, as shown when they failed to retreat during the Battle of New York, despite orders from the highest emergency international security body in the world. So here, it brings up the WSC, so International Organization, which is good for the past international involvement, and then it shows how even though like the international community has attempted to intervene, the Avengers have not allowed for that. So again, framing it in their favor. That being said, it is unsurprising that the UN has to this point taken little to no involvement with the Avengers since. That is why the crisis of Ultron was not dealt with by a representative body of trained, mostly democratically appointed trained officials, delegates, and generals, but by a 6 to 10 unelected, unappointed, underqualified, underprepared individuals who predictably made avoidable mistakes. This effective impunity is undemocratic, unsafe, and unacceptable any longer. So it shows like the international involvement at this point has not been it. It's not been good. It uses a lot of definitely loaded but very formal and very academic words like undemocratic, unsafe, unacceptable. Just like even the rhetoric of this paper is really good with the parallelism between undemocratic, unsafe, unacceptable, unappointed, underqualified, underprepared, a lot of adjectives. So even though it's kind of a short paragraph, if there's not much content to be found, then keep it short. It's better to just talk about what you do have than to make up something. But it's good. It's a lot better than the other one where, again, they completely neglect the other side. Third paragraph.
I wanted to add something really quick. It also, and again, I'm not a crisis expert, but it also might be beneficial to even talk about why there hasn't been a lot of involvement and the problem that is that, especially in this instance of you are on the side where you think there needs to be more international involvement, why there hasn't been any and how that's a problem. So taking the kind of like addressing the absence of it is a trick that a lot of GA people do, and I think it could be easily applied here.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. Okay, third paragraph. Your side's policy, your side's side. In the summer of 2015, a computer engineering graduate named Charles Spencer was volunteering to build houses for the poor in Sokovia. So right off the bat, we see that they're not sort of directly going to start and say like, this is my side's policy. They're framing it with an anecdotal example. So we'll see where that goes. At 22 years of age, a building fell on him, oh my god, while helplessly attempted to flee from a flying city. Again, a typo, or not typo, like a wrong tense, but again, it doesn't like ruin the whole paper because those haven't been occurring that much throughout the paper. So it's okay to make typos, it's just like don't make too many. He was not alone. It is for the sake of people like Charles that greater accountability is necessary. So right there we see, okay, so they introduced Charles' anecdote and now they're sort of extrapolating that into their argument. Any group that would tolerate his death, and not reconsider how it could be reformed to avoid such tragedies in the future would be monolithic and arrogant. So that kind of shows what their side is. They're saying like, if you're against this, you're monolithic and arrogant. So therefore, the opposite must be true, that they're for it and they are not monolithic and arrogant. To this point, that is what the Avengers have done because that is what they have always done. They've given little to no thought to how they could have done better, simply accepting any damage left in their wake as unavoidable and any outside input as useless and banal. They have a cool indifference to death and loss of life, limb, and property that would be unacceptable to any other governmental or international organization. As a former weapons dealer, Tony Stark can attest to the dangers of growing indifferent to the consequence of one's actions, simply chalking them up to inevitability. The Avengers have done this, as many of them have refused to even look at the proposed Sokovia Accords. So here, it kind of like, it shows what his side believes by showing why the other side is wrong, and again implying that the opposite is true. And then at the end, it actually goes, as a former weapons dealer, Tony Stark can attest to the dangers. So this paragraph kind of spills into the fourth section, which is your character, which again, as we said, like you don't have to follow like the 4-paragraph format, even though it does. It has like a blend between paragraphs. which is fine. It works really well here. And then here again, third person, not me, my, I, which the bad position paper did. Here it goes, Tony Stark, so third person. And then last section, oh wow, that's long. Your personal policy, your character. Again, it kind of started up here with the Tony Stark, and it'll continue. It says the Sokovia Accords are a well-structured, well-agreed upon way for the positive work of the Avengers, which cannot be denied, to become more refined and focused to save more lives like Charles Spencer. So again, it acknowledges a counter-argument. The Avengers aren't entirely bad. You cannot deny their positive work, but this is a way to improve it, refine it, focus it. They would offer a way for the Avengers to cooperate with local governments to save lives like those lost in the Lagos. They would give oversight and aid that would help prevent situations like the tragic and devastating mistake that led to Ultron's onslaught of destruction. It continues to say like positives about it. It drops, again, sort of another instance of quantitative data when it says, by far the most important reason why to pass the Accords would be because of 117 of the 193 member nations of the UN have ratified them. So again, it shows that you actually know what you're talking about. You've done research on the topic, and while you drop it in the position paper, a lot of you will find that if you have like a really good piece of like evidence that you find in your position paper research, you can usually drop that in conference to like completely destroy someone else's like speech. So do your research. It continues to say, it says, if the Avengers begin to resist the will of the people here for the arrogant sake of their own power, then they pass the threshold into tyranny. Already there are many people who do not want the Avengers in their area because they reasonably see that havoc and destruction follow the Avengers wherever they go. The Accords will lend Avengers legitimacy and minimize that destruction, which will allow them to be more effective wherever they go, working with instead of against the governments of the world. The argument here isn't even a future with the Accords having been passed and obeyed versus the way things used to be with unnecessary wanton destruction, because now that this option has been proposed, the Avengers cannot return to operating as they used to. They either do the sensible thing that all morals of democracy, peace, and safety point to, or they strike out as vigilantes fighting legitimate human governments as much other threats, becoming little more than an enhanced vigilante squad rather than international heroes of Earth. The Avengers should sign, agree to, and cooperate with the Sokovia Accords. So, again, really good paper. But as with anything, it can be improved. So while this paper is really good, I think that the fourth section is a little bit lacking. It has more content sort of similar to the other sections. It doesn't entirely talk about like Tony Stark himself that much, but it does sort of wrap things up really nicely, and it does provide, even though it doesn't say like this is Tony Stark's claim, this is Tony Stark's plan, it does say like this is what should happen, the Avengers should sign, agree to, whatever. So I would be a bit more specific and clear that it's your character, and I would probably even go more into your character's background and why they support this issue. Unfortunately, a lot of you may find that your characters don't have a ton of historical information on them. So what I recommend at that point is that like if you have like someone a bit more obscure and you're not really sure like specifically what they did or like really detailed like what they believed in, you just have like a general idea, then I would go with what you have and sort of extrapolate it, so like extend it and be like, if they support this, then logically they'd probably support this. But if you really don't have like that much information, don't worry so much about the fourth section, because in my opinion, if you have like a really strong like first, second, third section, it's still going to get a really nice score, and it's more importantly, the research that you do sets you up really well for committee.
Also, adding on to what Ben said before, this paper does something else that the other one didn't. It's far less radical, and then the instances where it does seem a little radical, it has a call for it, whereas the other one, it was totally unnecessary to say half the things it did, and it gave no reason as to backing why they should do such things. They're just totally eradicating the other side as they're evil and a cult.
Yeah. So like adding on to like what Casey said, it's okay to like use really strong language at times, but you kind of need like a context for it. So a really good example is here, where it brings up Charles Spencer, who had a building fall on him and die, and then it kind of follows it up with a really strong claim of that any group that would tolerate his death is monolithic and arrogant. Usually, if you just straight up call someone like you're monolithic and arrogant, like that's really strong, that's really aggressive. But if you contextualize that by saying you support a building falling on someone and you tolerate that and you're fine with that, now you're monolithic and arrogant, that's very different from like in the bad paper, just right off the bat saying like I don't have any
Totally
idea why
insane.
anyone would support this. So yeah, good paper, really long paper, but it's not too long. It's not to the point where a grader would kind of get annoyed that you're forcing them to read 4+ pages. So yeah, but again, I think it can improve in the 4th section. So with that, wait, real quick before I continue, does anyone have any questions about the 2 papers that we just read? Or any questions up to this point? Okay, just like drop them in the chat if you haven't, I'll read them. But okay, next steps. So again, you should all have both your background guide and delegate guide made available to you. So read through your background guide. That's gonna definitely set you up to continue your own research for your position paper and for committee. So that's a really good starting point. They intentionally don't give you too much information on your characters, for example, because we want you to sort of do that yourself. So we set you up and we give you a basic, very foundational introduction of your characters and of the topic. But if you want to continue and if you want more specific research, you're gonna have to do that on your own. Yeah, like Ella just said, you will find all the resources on the WordPress website. So read through your background guide, research your character, your allies, your policies, your position, and your enemies. What's that quote? Keep your enemies closer. That one, whatever. You get what I'm saying. So
Keep your friends close, but your enemies closer.
yes, Confucius. I don't know. I'm a mess today, but it's okay. Organize your research. Definitely. So there is a crisis position paper organizer available on the website. I would utilize that because if you do your research like I do, where you have 20 Wikipedia tabs open at the top of your Chrome and you have no idea which one you're looking for at any given time, it's gonna be hard to write your paper. So organize it, do it. Work early and work often is the saying that I like to stick with, or I try to. So organize it, don't become a mess. Start working on your position paper. They're due February 22nd to 26th, so although that seems like it's a long time away, what you often find is that time flies by, you haven't done anything, and then you're cramming for it. So start early, start often.
Especially since you guys are high school students and you will have finals this year, most likely. You will be spending most of your January, in my personal experience, studying, and you don't want to cram everything during the beginning of your next semester, So recommendation from a basically experienced, almost done high school student. Start them now just to get it out, just get it started so that you're not having to start it right after you've done all of your finals and you're exhausted.
Really solid point, Ella. Again, there's a lot of resources available for you on the website. We've been working really hard to try to help you guys out, even though we can't have like in-person DOP or anything. You have office hours available, although neither Casey nor I are your chairs. They still hold office hours, so if you have any questions on position papers, that'd be a really, really good idea to go visit them and be like, hey, I have a question. Oh,
the chairs are actually the ones who wrote the example position papers we read today, so they will know those pretty well because they wrote the good and bad ones, and you can talk to them about that specifically and anything on these slides as well because they have access to them.
yeah, and the position papers are actually graded by your chairs and your committee staff, so me and Casey, we don't really get to see them. We don't really do anything with them. We know how to write them, but we will not be grading them. So the best people to ask if you have any questions or if you need help, would definitely be your 2 chairs. If you reach out to me or Casey though, we can still help you, but I would definitely recommend your chairs. So your next office hour, is that office hours or your next webinar? Office hours, right? Yeah, office hours. So the next office hours is real close. So today in like 2 hours. So go to that if
And you
have
don't have to
any.
be there. It's not a webinar. So if you guys haven't gone to your office hours, just a quick rundown. They're not webinars like where you sit through a giant lecture. You just pop in any time between 6 and 6:40. It's that little 40-minute window. Pop in, ask a question, they can answer it to you. And if you can't make it today, I believe there is somewhere on our website, I'll find it, where you can find contact information for our secretariat members. So you can find contact information for your head chairs. I'll get that to you guys in a second. Sorry to interrupt there.
Oh, that's fine. It's fine. Always welcome. What was this? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, office hours is a really good idea. Looking at the examples we provided you is a really good idea for basic format, although we intentionally chose a very different topic from our actual topic so that you're not tempted to take any of the claims or research or ideas from the position papers. So yeah, you have a lot of resource available, a lot of wonderful people trying to help you. So do not hesitate to reach out. And really, although position papers aren't ever a guarantee of success in committee, they are a really, really solid way to set you up for success. So work on them, try your best. And then after that, you'll have like this period of time where you're not really doing much for crisis because we don't do resolutions. But continue your research, keep it fresh, maintain it. And there will be the next webinar, I believe, is months away, but it will cover the actual in-committee directive writing and sort of like flow.
Another fun thing about position papers, and again, I've only ever been in a GA committee. I mean, I've been in Security Council, but it's different. I've been in only GA committees in terms of a delegate and grading, but I know that this is across the board for everybody. If you write a good position paper, your chairs will remember your name. Your name will be in the back of your head when you walk into committee. And if you write a bad position paper that obviously looks like you didn't put a lot of work into it, even if you don't know the topic very well and you're struggling and you're new, even if you've never done crisis before, even if there's not a lot for you to talk about, you can still write a good position paper, right? Especially if you acknowledge the shortcomings that you may have as your character, whatever, right? But if you write a bad one, your chairs will remember your name. And we're humans, we have bias, and they may have low expectations, but if you write a good one, you can wow them months before a conference. I know as someone who has both written and graded, I have graded position papers and resolutions and thought about countries going into conference and being like, I want to see how this country is going to debate because they had a good, strong position paper. So do it for yourself to learn about your character more, to really show your abilities, but also to wow your chairs and be someone they think about for the next 5 months.
Also, to really drive this home, the chairs are actually the people who determine your awards primarily. We had a say in it, but we don't control it entirely. So it's very important that not only do you do stuff behind the scenes, but you also, show your chairs that you're competent by writing good position paper. Because you could have won the war and it could have been all up to you, but if you don't speak in conference or write a good position paper, there is little to no chance that you get an award.
Like the gavel, but you'll probably get like an award.
Right, an award. There are multiple awards, but but the strongest thing is showing your commitment throughout the whole year. Because the one benefit of JMUN, especially for older kids, I don't know how many of you have done MUN before or have done, MUN conferences, but the benefit of JMUN versus a normal MUN is you have a month to write a position paper, maybe. You have a month to show your chairs who you are, and then you have one day, usually one day in conference, to show them who you are and that you can win. And that's a lot harder than JMUN. You have a whole year to prepare yourself and to get your name in their heads over and over again, and 2 days in conference. So use all of the time you can get. Of course, don't kill yourself. focusing and spending all your time on JMUN, but use the time you're given. You know, don't procrastinate. As someone who has procrastinated and not procrastinated in certain instances, and as much as I like procrastinating, you know, it's always fun to put it off. You're going to be in such a much better position to not procrastinate. So.
Yeah, sort of just like wrapping things up. Even though you don't read out your position papers in committee like you may have in previous committees, that doesn't mean that they're useless. One, they give you points. Two, again, they contextualize and they prepare you and like they set you up for actual committee. Three, and this isn't really related entirely to JMUN, but I like to think I'm a good writer, and I think a lot of that comes from my experience in JMUN and having sort of like thrown myself into writing research papers for the last 6 years, 7 years.
Yeah,
This is the 7th.
Literally most of my research writing skills have come from what I've figured out from JMUN, like search engines and Wikipedia, and all of my strong papers in school have been, especially my argumentative pieces, because I mean with Crisis, I've never done it, obviously, but I'm listening to Ben and Casey talk about the structure, and I'm like, that is what I'm writing in AP Lang, right? Like the resources you learn from JMUN, the research skills that you gain will stick with you forever and will especially look good when it comes to writing college apps. So that's a thing to keep in your mind, because you are 9th and 10th graders. You have to start thinking about that now, especially as a high schooler, senior who's doing college jobs right now. I would not be where I am today without the writing skills JMUN gave me. So.
For sure. You'll find that a lot of the long time delegates and staffers of JMUN go to like some really solid colleges, and I think a lot of that comes from JMUN, and from the writing skills and the research skills and the passion that you develop from it. So yeah, these are worth it. Oh, last thing, and then it was kind of touching. So again, if you don't have a whole lot of information regarding your character, that might kind of dishearten you and make you feel like you pulled like the short end of the stick. I'm really bad with idioms today. And you're like, dang, I got like a really bad character. Don't worry about it, because like in my last Crisis, I had someone who like I think literally didn't exist. And I was worried, but then like you come into committee and you get like your portfolio powers, which is what you can do as a delegate. And the Crisis staff usually work so that even if you're up against someone like super prolific and famous in history, it's still really balanced. And so we're gonna try our best to do that. So don't worry if you can't find a whole lot on your person, you'll be fine.
All right, well, let's open it up to any questions. Great job, Ben and Casey. I love being in the Crisis webinars because I learn what you guys do too. So I hope that everyone else feels the same. So if anyone wants to, I think if you're okay with unmuting yourself, that's fine. If anyone wants to type in the chat, I think that'd be best. You can message all three of us or just the general chat. So yeah, we'll give it a second. All right. I'll give it another.
Oh.
Okay. I'll be right back.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh, okay. You're welcome.
Well, one more second for anyone who's still typing up a question or anything. Well, I think that's about it. We'll let you guys go, so you can go to office hours, or you can go. Oh, when's the next office hours? Today. So I'm sure the link is on the website to the office hours. There's like the actual Zoom. It's password protected. The advisor who gave you the link for the Zoom today should have the password for the part of the website. I forget what it is, but worst comes to worst, have your advisor, or you can email me. Oh, after today. Let's see. It's on the website under DOP calendar. The next office hours for Crisis they are a little bit less frequent. We have none over winter break. And then it's, so the next office hours are Tuesday, January 5th at 2:30 p.m. That is technically the British office hours. So that means that the British head chair, Freddie, will be there to answer your questions. But you can go even if you're not the British side, if you're just the American side. So Tuesday, January 5th at 2:30 in the afternoon. And then after that, it's it's the American ones on January 18th. But January 5th and then January 18th. All right. Sorry, didn't understand your question at first. Yeah, but like I was saying, if you don't have the password or access to any of the things on the website and you need them and your advisor doesn't know the password, you could always email me at the Secretary General if you want to go to the contact information tab. You can always email me, Secretary General, email right there. And you can also email Caroline, who we met at the beginning of today, at her email right there. And those are on the website, and we will get you the password. Just make sure not to share it with too many people who aren't MUN. It's not a big deal. We just want to make sure that there's no Zoom bombing or anything. But yeah, all right. Well, thank you, Ben and Casey, so much. And thank you for everyone who came today. I hope that it was very informational. And I know that we can't see your faces and that's sad and everything, but it's still nice to have you guys here and have you guys here the whole time. So I appreciate it. I assume Ben and Casey do too. Any last words, Ben, Casey?
I hope that all of you guys have a fun time during the conference.
Yeah, for sure. Good luck, guys. I hope you fall in love with Crisis the way I have. See you then.
Oh, also don't forget, have meticulous plans to destroy your enemies. Super important.
Just don't tell anybody about them.
Oh yeah, wait. Yeah, like final. So in your like fourth section of your position paper where you go into like your own character, you don't have to like spill the beans on like all of your plans and be like, I'm going to kill this person. Even if like that's secretly your plan. No, you should be like, you should definitely keep some stuff to yourself and just kind of like give like a foundational idea of like the direction that you want to go in. Maybe not very specifically like what you want to do.
Keep everybody in suspense.
Oh yeah, to add some evidence or to add an example behind Ben, well, what he was saying, I was at one point Denmark in the scramble for Africa, and because I was a smaller country at the time, I had no say or no power in this conference. So in my position paper, I stated something like I would challenge Germany's authority. What ended up happening is that I started World War I at that point as Denmark, a tiny country, and eventually got executed, but it was a fun time while it was happening.
All right. Well, thank you guys for the fun anecdotes. If anyone want to stop your screen sharing, I think you're good now. Great. Well, see you all later. Hopefully see you guys at the office hours. I might pop in. And see you guys next webinar also. Be sure to tell your friends about this too if it was helpful. And also let them know that it will be on YouTube in like a day or two. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good rest of your afternoon. Bye-bye.